Hi everyone, and welcome to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with Wendy K Laidlaw. Wendy has spent the last 2 years helping women with various stages of endometriosis to heal naturally after putting her condition into remission. After her own healing success from stage 4 endometriosis and adenomyosis, she's inspired to heal others, and her goal is to help some of the 175 million women know that there is another way other than painkillers, drugs, or surgery. This is the place to be for real talk with real people for real results, so you can learn how to heal your endometriosis naturally. Please note that the opinions expressed in this program may represent options, but are not a substitute for proper medical care. Before starting any new healthcare program, we recommend you consult with a health professional.
As always, I hope that this podcast finds you well. So as I sit here in my garden on one of those very rare sunny days in Scotland, I'm reminded how willpower does not work. I have for decades willed the weather, as I explained in my last podcast, to be warmer and sunnier than it actually is each year, because each year I anticipate and eagerly wait for distinct seasons and periods of time I can look forward to the outdoors. You see, the cold hits me hard. I feel the westerly wind coming off the Arctic Ocean to the north of the North Sea. I recently took the time to explore the map of the world and was shocked how close Scotland is to Iceland. Of course, this explains a lot. I hear the newscasters and weathermen talk about seasonal lows for the time of year, with the illusion that spring and summer seasons come with it, some guaranteed warmer weather and sunshine. Having lived and worked in Scotland for over 50 years, you would have thought that I would have realised long ago that we do not have normal and distinct seasons. In fact, some local residents said to me recently, knowingly, that we just have one perpetual autumn with bouts of frost and westerly bitter winds. It was then I realised that this was another area of my life I was in denial about. How for more years than I care to remember, I had approached the spring with such optimism, as I adore the sign of snowdrops, crocuses, daffodils, and of course these beautiful apple blossom trees. With this vain hope of heat and sun touching the skin that has been under wraps, perpetual layers of wool, cotton, and layers of clothing for months on end. Yet this year unfolded one more time. I caught myself willing the weather to be different. I think this naive willpower approach starts in childhood. We are fed the fairy tales, the folklore and fantasies from as soon as we can breathe. The fairy godmother granted Wendy's wish of endless sunshine-filled days to be outdoors in nature and to enjoy the sounds of birds, bees and lying on a beach. A big fat fantasy, of course. You can't willpower the weather this far north of the equator. But it's taken years of journaling to fully recognise how being able to rely and look forward to a warm climate and predictable weather is so important to me now. I've heard myself repeatedly talk about the weather in Scotland and how bad and unpredictable and cold it is for years. The interviews I have done and the jokes I've made about it, but I've had enough. I'm going to put my energy into changing my environment, as I mentioned before, in the next 6 to 12 months, epidemics and pesky viruses permitting. I renounce my willpower on the weather and thinking that wishful thinking would change it. And it's much like endometriosis, isn't it? Willpower doesn't work for endometriosis. If you do not address the 5 Ps, then it's as futile as willing the Scottish weather to be warm and predictable during the time most countries have a summer. You see, if you've had the condition, i.e. abdominal pain with periods or at ovulation, then willing it will not help. It does astonish me when my team get the odd email stating that they have read my book in its entirety and appreciate how I laid exactly what worked for me, i.e. I cured the incurable condition and put it in remission, yet they say they don't want to exclude wheat or swap out wheat-free alternatives. Given that almost one page of my book at the end states, no wheat, no wheat, no wheat. If you've had some royal messenger knock on your door one day with the 5 keys, note the plural, to the kingdom of a pain-free pelvis, you wouldn't question whether to only pick one of the keys or choose 3 or 4 of the 5. No, you would grab that bunch of keys and skip your way to the doorways of discovery and freedom from pain and suffering. Unless, of course, you feel you deserve to suffer. But you know You don't you? But to try and will yourself better without waking up and being aware that if this condition were simple, you'd have put it into remission already. Endometriosis, by its very nature, is a complex condition. Therefore, when you understand that in its entirety, you have the keys, then you can put willpower on the back burner for now and focus on opening the doors with the keys I give you. I have more books coming out later this year to guide and support you further about the emotional components and the past components and people components, but I hope you will be less stubborn than I was and recognise willpower does not work. I tried willpower with the medical field for over 33 years and I would end up bedridden, as you know, filled with shame and blame and feel like a fat failure. I willed the painkillers to work. I willed the drugs to work. I willed the surgeries to work. I willed the surgeon with the new procedure, the smaller hands and all sorts of fandangles and promises. I willed them all to work. Of course, they didn't work because willpower doesn't work. I have seen some advertisement recently for a TENS machine, which is this electrical pulsating device that you can attach to your abdomen with pads. It kind of misses the point though. Yes, it may provide a temporary distraction to the brain and pain sensors, and having used something similar in the past, I understand its allure. Yet it is another surface level management of symptoms and not conducive to addressing the root underlying causes of the pain. Thereby, I get women emailing me why the TENS machine is not working for them. And it's not working because it's a management tool, just like the painkillers, drugs and surgery. It's not getting to the root causes. To help you manage, in inverted commas, the day to get through work despite the fact that your body is racked in pain and you have full-scale anxiety as you don't know for how long this suppressor distractor will work for. So it's just another willpower gimmick that a company has jumped into the ever-burgeoning endometriosis space to trick women into thinking it will help them. And when the novelty of it wears off and willpower is once again exercised, the poor woman is left feeling flat and a failure. But it's not her fault. She does not know what she does not know. Willpower does not work. Another area where willpower does not work is about people, places and things. There is a mantra in Codependence Anonymous which states, "We are powerless over people, places and things, but oh so powerful over ourselves." But what if you don't know who you are or what you think or feel about yourself? Well, by now, if you've been listening to me for a while, you know I'm going to say and encourage journaling. It's one of the safest things you can do to understand what's happening in your body and in your mind, body and spirit. If you've been listening for a while, you know that this tool alone will literally guide you to what to do with your body, mind and environment and how to support it in a way that will lead to full health. Of course, as always, you know it's not a quick fix and it is no wonder cure, but after decades of trying to keep others happy and willfully have them accept you and love you, journaling allows you to connect with that wise, intuitive, authentic self. Being a bit of a book nerd and avid reader, I found myself guided to several books recently. One in particular called Before You Know It, The Science of Storytelling, and you guessed it, Willpower Doesn't Work. They all came along just at the right time for me. I had forgotten the subconscious influences that are around us everywhere and to be mindful of what and who is coming into my world and mind. Before you know it, you are doing and saying and being what you didn't want and shocked to wake up one day chronically ill, bedridden and near total organ failure, aka that was me of old. The science of storytelling reminds me about the stories we are told and we tell ourselves about ourselves. From our earliest of ages, our brains create an illusionary model of the world and the people in it, and then write back about ourselves. Some of this is conscious, but so much of it is subconscious, and this is where, again, willpower does not work. It is like the environment you live in or work in. Because humans are incredibly great at adapting themselves to their environment, which is awesome if you're stuck in the desert and need to find water. But if you're in a toxic environment, it takes tremendous energy to not get sucked down to the way of thinking and being. For example, if you live in an old, cold country where the culture is to focus on negativity and what isn't working and how doom and gloom everything is, it is exhausting emotionally and physically to try and will against the characters and the people in that culture. Willpower just does not work. All that happens is you end up feeling blamed, drained, and pained to be around these complaining people who think differently from you. They will never change. Remember, we are powerless over others, people, places, and things. But we can, through the journaling, increase our awareness about how we feel about ourselves and what we can control. We can recognize what we do have power over. We can put our energy into concrete steps to fulfill the indwelling dreams and desires and ambitions of our soul and our spirit. I regularly have EndoBoss beginners and EndoBosses share how much sunshine on their skin, for example, affects their moods and bodies. Which is not surprising, really, given the happy hormone serotonin is produced when you're outside and the sun rays hit your body. Yet, if you live in a cold, damp country, then the weather will affect your mood. Willpower does not work. I've always liked to see myself as a positive person, but sometimes you have to see the reality of a situation and stop covering it up with jokes and wasted optimism towards areas you literally cannot control, i.e. the weather and other people. As a child, I used to wish with all of my will that I could influence my mother's moods. One of my earliest memories was lying in bed, willfully saying and praying, if Mum was in a bad mood yesterday, then she has to be in a good mood today. I innocently thought I could influence and will my mum to be happy and kind. What struck me the most from reading Willpower Doesn't Work is the subconscious impact from our environment and the culture. It is astonishing yet reassuring somehow to hear how many women with endometriosis go abroad to the sun and or move away from trying, toxic, original family, and their symptoms reduce and diminish. Yet, sadly, if they are lulled back or have to go back to their homeland of birth, the symptoms return. You see, we are conditioned from birth, obviously. We do not have a choice nor a will upon being unceremoniously delivered into the bright, noisy, cold world with our bare bottoms slapped and gasping for air. Our survival brain takes over, seeking food, comfort, and attachment from a warm, safe caregiver, ideally the mother from which we came. But what if that early environment of the womb was a hostile one? What if the hormones or messages washing over your womb home and your placenta were alarming to your newly developed senses? How do you think your nervous system would be programmed for life? Yes, your nervous system would be wired to be dialed up and on edge, to please, to try and predict, to be sensitive to the slightest change or atmosphere or facial shift or expression. What if your mother had endured mistreatment growing up herself or found herself pregnant and her burgeoning music career halted or felt pressure to have children when she didn't want to have them later in life? Or what if she had a difficult pregnancy or a bereavement or a loss or an unexpected house move and an onslaught of profound stress? Yes, all of those experiences would have affected you too, as you innocently were in the womb. Even after birth, your acute senses would absorb your mother's feelings and emotions, unwittingly and unknowingly, only to later on question the validity of them and absurdity of them, perhaps. It used to annoy me in my journey when certain medical personnel would say I just had to get better, as if I wasn't willfully trying hard enough, or if I could just willfully try and convince myself and my body. But I was trying to do that every single day I was bedridden. Willpower does not work. I tried willpower over and over and over. If I could just try harder, I thought I would be okay. If I could just please that person more, I would be okay. If I could just be perfectly perfect, then I would be okay. But what took me a long time to realise was I was not responsible for other people's happiness. It was not my job to make them happy. And that is still the case to this day. I am not responsible for other people's happiness. I believe I'm responsible for sharing this message and giving it to women, but it's not my responsibility to heal them. It is their responsibility. Of course, I cared and felt the people's pain of the past, and now, even doing the work that I do, I have to remember with the women I work with that this is their journey. It is your journey, not mine. I am not responsible for them. My willing them to avoid wheat or toxic people is wasted energy. Yet trying to find some middle ground is key, I think. Along with having the keys to the endometriosis remission gym or kingdom, I recognise I can share, but not willfully impose. You see, if you have not already realised, putting this condition into remission is a journey. There is no destination. It is an ongoing journey. You make a decision and you start the journey. The journey of self-discovery, a journey of seasons, of grieving, of processing, of sadness, of ancestral unfolding. The journey of self-connection, self-compassion, self-acceptance. A journey recognizing your power over yourself. You see, from dating back to 1 BC or over 2,000 years ago, women have been persecuted and put down from men in the medical field, the law courts and religious establishments. I recently read a fascinating book called Unwell Woman about how men have controlled women for thousands of years, and I admit it made me really quite cross to read. I was aware of Aristotle and the wandering womb theories of the time, and even the burning of the so-called witches during the dark periods, who were actually heart-centered women and midwives and healers trying to help other women. I recognise I live in an old Victorian misogynistic society where the patriarchal attitude towards women is still very negative and rife. As I remember my ex telling me I was his chattel and that all women are mental. I would grow up in a family unit where women were put down, treated with disdain, had derogatory marks made about them, filled with contempt and dislike. The dislike of all women made perfectly clear for all to hear. Willpower does not work. If it did, I would have completely impacted this world in a very different way already, and certainly for good. But my willpower was put in the wrong direction and almost ended my life. So for me to put my condition in remission and cure this so-called incurable disease, the 5 Ps need to be looked at in detail. Please, again, don't assume one magic supplement or one pill is going to work wonders. That is a mistake many millions of women make. Be smarter than that. You are smarter than that because you're listening to this podcast. Tune in. Dial in to those instincts. Recognize what you can and can't control. Then you will gain decades on me. Be smarter than I was, a whole lot earlier than I was. It took me far too long to realize, and I lost decades of my life. Willpower is wasted on the external. Turn that willpower inside out and will the power to really truly hear yourself internally, your soul and spirit. Hear the sadness or hear the ache in your heart. Hear the pain. In natural evolution, organisms adapt to whatever situation they find themselves in. So if it's helpful to be smaller, a species may start to shrink. Essentially, they're forced to adapt to their environment. When it comes to people, many of us are like animals in the wild undergoing natural evolution. We're often unable to change our environment, so we adapt to them instead, regardless of whether this benefits us in the long run. So be aware of your environment. Is it causing you to shrink? Is it causing you to adapt, to be a way that you don't want to be? Someone asked me recently if it was okay to have a negative thought, i.e. because in the law of attraction, for example, you might attract it. Well, my answer was, of course you're allowed to have a negative thought and feeling. You are a human after all. You are not a robot. And please don't let anyone tell you otherwise. What we're talking about here is not staying stuck in it, but is looking at it, above it, recognizing it and being curious about it. Just noticing it. It is ludicrous, a ludicrous suggestion to say that any human being, especially a woman with endometriosis, that she should not feel sad or bad or down or depressed. To disallow those feelings and emotions only makes them stronger. To shove them down only causes tension. To try and ignore them takes tremendous amount of energy. One of the biggest challenges EndoBoss beginners face is learning to listen to their emotions and feelings and be the observer of their feelings and emotions. Being an observer of them does not mean that you are them, and that's an important point to reiterate. You are not your feelings. You are not your emotions. Watching them gives you strength. Just noticing them gives you power. And embracing them, most importantly, gives you the will and the power to make the emotional and physical changes to support your body to heal. For never, ever, ever forget that your glorious body is designed to heal. It is a self-healing mechanism. Your job and willpower needs to be focused on what is preventing or stopping that natural process. Put your will inwards and truly hear your soul's desire. Allow yourself, with the help of your journaling, meditation and prayer, to be guided to become a boss of your endometriosis and EndoBoss. To your health.
Thanks for listening to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with Wendy K Laidlaw, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and rate us. If you're interested in learning more, you can download your top 5 jumpstart tips at healendometriosisnaturally.com and jump on the VIP email list. Remember to keep you number one. The world needs a healthy you.